The massive command bridge of the Takari flagship Darkstar hummed with activity as Admiral Ran stood before the holographic display, his silver-grey skin reflecting the blue glow of countless stars. With 4 arms crossed behind his back, he studied the small yellow sun and its insignificant planets, particularly the third one, wrapped in blue and white clouds. Earth, the final conquest before his glorious retirement. "Magnify Sector 4, he ordered, his voice deep and resonant. The hologram zoomed in, showing primitive human satellites and space stations orbiting their homeworld. Ran's upper lip curled in what passed for a smile among his kind. These humans had barely taken their first steps into space, still burning chemical fuels to escape their gravity well. They had no chance against the might of the Takari Empire. Admiral, his second-in-command June, approached, datapad in hand. "Final intelligence reports on the human defenses." Ran's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he absorbed the information. "Their military forces remain divided by geographic boundaries? Even now?" "Yes, Admiral. Nearly 200 separate political entities with no unified defense protocol. Their largest military powers maintain independent command structures." Ran laughed, a sound like stones grinding together. In his 6 centuries of military service, he had never encountered such foolishness. Even the Benturi, with their hive-mind disagreements, had united when faced with extinction. "Show me the invasion corridors," Ran commanded. The hologram shifted, displaying Earth from different angles with red lines marking approach vectors for the fleet. 10,000 warships, sleek obsidian vessels powered by dark matter engines, would enter the system from multiple trajectories, overwhelming any possible response. Across the vast hangar bays of the Takari fleet, robotic loaders moved with precision, preparing fighter craft and ground assault vehicles. Ran had perfected this dance of destruction across 17 other worlds. The Volari had surrendered after a single day. The proud Nisharians lasted a week before their cities burned. Only the Zeptites had managed to destroy a few Takari vessels before their inevitable defeat. "And what of their weapons?" Ran asked, picking up a small model of a human fighter jet from his collection of conquered species technologies. He had started this collection centuries ago, a hobby that had become something of a legend among the Takari military elite. June displayed visuals of Earth's most advanced weapon systems, primitive nuclear arsenals, kinetic projectile weapons, early-stage energy beams with minimal penetration capabilities. Their most advanced fighters still rely on atmospheric lift, no shield technology, no faster-than-light capabilities, no gravitational manipulation, and their space presence, a handful of small stations in low orbit, mining operations on their moon, 3 small scientific outposts on the 4th planet, nothing of military significance. Admiral Ran placed the model back among his collection, which would soon include examples of human technology. "They will take their place among the others," he said quietly, almost with reverence. "Another species to serve the glory of Takari." In his long career, Ran had overseen the subjugation of 17 sentient civilizations, earning him the title Harbinger of Takari Dawn. His strategies were taught in imperial war colleges. Young officers dreamed of serving under his command. The Takari philosophy was simple but effective. Overwhelming force, precision strikes against leadership and communication centers, followed by offers of protection in exchange for resources and servitude. Those who accepted survived. Those who resisted did not. "The conquest fleet is assembled, Admiral," announced Fleet Commander Min, entering the bridge with a formal bow. 10,000 vessels as requested. Troop carriers, planetary bombardment platforms, atmospheric fighters all ready. Ran nodded with satisfaction. It was excessive for such a primitive world, but this would be his final campaign. He wanted it to be memorable, a crushing display of Takari might that would be remembered for generations. "The High Command has transmitted their final approval," Min continued. "They expect Earth to provide excellent mining resources for our neutronium refineries. Early scans had revealed that Earth's core contained significant deposits of rare elements needed for Takari technology. Its water resources alone made it valuable, not to mention the biological diversity that could be studied and exploited. And the humans themselves," Ran asked. Physically unremarkable but adaptable, the biological division suggests they may be useful for labor in various environments. Their intellectual capacity appears average, though they show unusual creativity. In their problem-solving approaches, Rand's four eyes narrowed slightly. Creative problem-solvers sometimes presented unexpected challenges, but nothing his forces couldn't handle. The bridge fell silent as Rand stepped toward the main viewport. Beyond the reinforced transparent alloy, the vast fleet stretched into the darkness, a city of warships, each capable of destroying a small moon. Energy pulses rippled along their hulls as weapons systems cycled through diagnostic checks. "Begin jump sequence," Rand ordered. "Staggered approach, standard conquest formation." The massive engines of the fleet powered up, creating ripples in space-time itself. The Takari had conquered the stars by mastering the fold between dimensions, allowing them to cross vast distances in moments. "Jump coordinates locked on Sol system," reported the navigation officer. Rand took his command seat, feeling the familiar anticipation before battle. Though this would hardly qualify as a battle, more like a harvesting operation. "Before we depart," he announced to his bridge crew, "I wish to note that this conquest marks my final campaign in service to the Empire. After 17 successful planetary integrations, the High Command has granted my request for elevation to the Imperial Council." Murmurs of congratulation spread across the bridge. Elevation to the Council was the highest honor a military commander could achieve. "Let us make this final conquest worthy of remembrance," Rand continued. "Execute jump sequence." Space twisted around the massive fleet as 10,000 ships vanished from their home system, tearing holes in reality that would deposit them near Earth within hours. As his flagship entered the jump, Admiral Rand looked once more at the image of Earth on his personal display. Such a small blue world with no idea what was coming. One final conquest, he whispered to himself. One final world to kneel before Takari might. Little did he know that this unremarkable planet would soon become the graveyard of his ambitions and the beginning of the end for the Takari Empire. The skies above Lunar Colony shimmered as reality tore open. Through the dimensional ruptures emerged obsidian warships, their hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Alarms blared throughout the dome cities as civilians rushed toward emergency shelters. The colony's defense force, just 12 outdated patrol vessels, scrambled to respond. "Unknown vessels approaching from multiple vectors," shouted Lieutenant Hahn at the Lunar Defense Command Center, counting over 30 capital ships with smaller craft launching. Commander Lee stared at the tactical display in horror. The mysterious fleet dwarfed anything humans had ever constructed. "Get me Earth Command, now." But before the transmission could connect, energy beams lanced from the alien vessels, cutting through Luna's defensive shields like they weren't even there. The main communications array exploded in a shower of molten metal and crystalline fragments. "They're jamming all frequencies," reported Communications Officer Park, frantically trying to establish any connection. "We're blind." Similar scenes unfolded at the Mars Research Station, where scientists and the small security detachment had even less warning. The Takari invasion force struck both human outposts simultaneously, a tactic Admiral Rand had perfected over centuries of conquest. At Earth Defense Headquarters beneath the Pacific Ocean, grainy footage from the colonies played on emergency channels before cutting to static. Military leaders from nations across the globe watched in stunned silence as humanity's first contact with alien life came in the form of overwhelming aggression. Last transmission from Luna estimates enemy force at over 300 vessels. General Choi reported, her face grim. "Mars Station has gone completely dark." Admiral Kang slammed his fist against the table. "What about the Daehan? Is it operational?" All eyes turned toward the holographic display showing a sleek vessel, unlike any other in Earth's modest fleet. While most human spacecraft were practical, utilitarian constructions, the Daehan represented something different, an experimental ship designed not for exploration or transport, but for warfare. Its development had been controversial, with many Earth governments opposing its creation as unnecessarily provocative. Now it was humanity's only hope. Captain Kim stood on the bridge of the Daehan. watching as his crew prepared for what would likely be a suicide mission. The ship hummed with nervous energy as technicians made final adjustments to systems that had never been tested in actual combat. "Stealth systems online," reported First Officer Lee. "Prototype shield generators at 60% capacity. That's the best we'll get without another month of calibration." Kim nodded, his expression betraying nothing of the fear he felt. "It will have to do. What's our weapons status?" "Particle cannons charged. Experimental EMP torpedoes loaded. We have no idea if either will be effective against their technology." Kim studied the tactical display, showing the alien fleet's methodical destruction of the lunar colonies. Their attacks were precise, targeting military and communications infrastructure while largely avoiding civilian habitats. This wasn't random violence, it was a calculated military operation. "They're professionals," Kim observed. "They've done this before." He made his decision. "Set course for the dark side of Luna. We'll use the satellite debris field for cover and observe their attack patterns. I want to know everything about their weapons, shields, and targeting systems before we engage." The Daehan slipped away from Earth orbit, its experimental stealth system bending light around the hull, rendering it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. As they approached lunar orbit, the true scale of destruction became apparent. The alien ships moved with terrifying precision, their energy weapons slicing through hardened bunkers and defense platforms. "Record everything," Kim ordered, as they drifted silently through the debris field of destroyed lunar satellites. "Every energy signature, every communication frequency they use." For 6 tense hours, the Daehan observed the alien fleet's methodical dismantling of humanity's lunar presence. Kim watched with growing dread as the invaders deployed ground forces, mechanized units, and what appeared to be biological soldiers in advanced armor suits to secure key facilities. "Captain," Lee whispered, "they're taking prisoners." Sure enough, the aliens were herding surviving colonists onto transport vessels. Not extermination then, conquest. Somehow that was more chilling. A sudden alert from the sensor array broke the tense silence. "Captain, 3 enemy vessels breaking formation heading toward Mars. They appear to be scanning systematically. I think they're looking for us." Kim's mind raced. Their stealth technology wouldn't hide them forever, but they needed more data, especially on those shields that seemed to absorb all conventional weapons fire. "Helmsman, plot an intercept course with the smallest enemy vessel. Tactical, prepare to drop stealth and divert all power to shields and sensors when we engage." His crew stared at him in disbelief. "Sir," Lee protested, "dropping stealth will reveal our position to their entire fleet." "Exactly," Kim replied. "But first, we're going to hit them with everything we've got. I want to see how their shields respond." The Daehan glided silently toward its target, a Takari scout ship approximately twice its size. Kim waited until they were less than a kilometer away before giving the order. "Drop stealth, weapons free." The experimental human vessel suddenly appeared in space, its particle cannons already firing. The first volley struck the Takari vessel before its defensive systems could respond, briefly overloading a section of its shields. "Direct hit," shouted the weapons officer. Reading energy fluctuations in their shield matrix, the Takari ship recovered quickly, bringing its own weapons to bear as it sent out an alert to the fleet. Kim had expected this. Evasive maneuvers. "Sensors, are you getting clear readings on their shield modulation?" "Yes, Captain. The shields appear to operate on a rotating frequency. There's a pattern to the energy distribution." A blast from the Takari vessel rocked the Daehan, disrupting power throughout the ship. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. "Shields at 40%. We can't take another hit like that." Kim had seen enough. "We have what we need. Set course for Earth, maximum thrust. Transmit all sensor data on a tight beam to Defense Command." As the Daehan accelerated away, the Takari ship pursued, joined by 2 larger vessels converging from different directions. Energy beams sliced through space around them as the human ship pushed its engines beyond safety parameters. "They're gaining on us," Lee reported, her voice steady despite the situation. Kim made another fateful decision. "Divert all remaining power from weapons to engines and transmission systems. Make sure that data reaches Earth even if we don't." The E. Dahan streaked toward Earth, trailing plasma from damaged systems. Behind them, the Takari vessels closed the distance with methodical precision. On the Dark Star, Admiral Ran received the report of the human vessel's attack with mild surprise. "Show me," he commanded. The holographic display revealed the small human ship, now fleeing toward Earth. It was more advanced than expected, with technology that shouldn't have been possible given their intelligence reports. "Curious," Ran murmured. "They sacrificed stealth to attack a vessel they couldn't possibly defeat." His tactical officer hesitated. "Sir, they appear to be transmitting large data packets toward Earth." Understanding dawned on Ran's face. They weren't trying to win. They were gathering intelligence. For the first time, he felt a flicker of uncertainty. Intercept that vessel, now. But it was too late. The Dahan's transmission reached Earth seconds before 3 Takari energy beams converged on the human ship, turning it into expanding gas and debris. In the underwater command center, Admiral Kang watched the Dahan's final moments in silence. Then he turned to the assembled military leaders of Earth. "Captain Kim gave his life to send us this data. Now we use it." He pointed to the detailed scans of Takari shield frequencies and weapons signatures. "We have shipyards, we have resources, we have engineers, and now we have knowledge." As Admiral Ran prepared his standard ultimatum for the primitive species, demanding immediate surrender, an aide approached with troubled news. "Admiral, our sensors detect unusual activity in their orbital shipyards. The humans, they're building something." The underwater facility hummed with frantic activity, a hive of humanity's last hope buried 3 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean. Steel walkways crisscrossed the massive chamber, where the prototype vessel Hanbit took shape hour by hour. Welding sparks cascaded like mechanical waterfalls as construction robots and human engineers worked side by side in a desperate race against extinction. Dr. Park stood at the observation platform, dark circles under his eyes, his hands trembling, slightly as he reviewed the latest simulations on his tablet. He hadn't slept properly in the 17 days since the Mars research station fell, since the moment he watched helplessly through the station's emergency broadcast as his wife and daughter were herded onto Takari transport ships. The transmission had cut off moments later, leaving him with nothing but nightmares and a burning need for vengeance disguised as scientific determination. "Dr. Park," a voice called. He turned to see Admiral Kang approaching, flanked by representatives from nations that just months ago had been pointing nuclear weapons at each other. The Takari threat had accomplished what centuries of diplomacy could not: true global unity. "Your team claims a breakthrough with the shield technology," Kang said without preamble. Park nodded, gesturing toward the half-constructed ship below. "The data from Captain Kim's sacrifice showed us the frequency modulation patterns in the Takari shields. They use a predictable algorithmic sequence, mathematical perfection, but with a fatal flaw." He pulled up a simulation, showing energy beams striking a pulsing barrier. Their shields rotate through frequencies to disperse different energy attacks, but there's a microscopic delay, just 3 milliseconds, between frequency shifts. "If we time our weapons to hit precisely during that window, we can punch through their defenses," finished the Russian admiral, her eyes widening. "Exactly. We've already reconfigured the Hambit's shield generators to exploit this weakness defensively. Our shields will synchronize with theirs, creating momentary harmonic distortions in their attack patterns." The Chinese general studied the simulation with narrowed eyes. "And you're certain this will work against their entire fleet?" Park's expression hardened. "Their technology is impressive but arrogant. Their shields haven't fundamentally changed in centuries, because no species has ever challenged them effectively. They haven't needed to innovate." Below them, a massive section of hull plating moved into position, guided by precision-controlled magnetic fields. Unlike the utilitarian designs of previous human vessels, the Hanbit featured sleek, almost predatory lines. Its smaller size compared to Takari capital ships would make it more maneuverable, while its unconventional design might confuse Takari targeting systems optimized for known ship configurations. "And what of the weapon system?" asked the American president, who had insisted on being personally involved in this last-ditch effort. Park led the group to another section of the observation deck, overlooking what appeared to be a massive crystalline structure being carefully installed into the ship's core. "This is where we truly depart from conventional physics," he explained. "Based on theoretical work that was previously considered impossible, we've created a zero-point energy manipulator. It doesn't just harness the vacuum energy of space, it momentarily disrupts the quantum field itself." Seeing their confused expressions, he simplified. "Imagine being able to temporarily remove the laws of physics in a precisely targeted area. Matter can't exist properly without those laws. The effect lasts only milliseconds, but that's enough to, well, you'll see in the test firing." Hours later, gathered in the control room, Earth's leaders watched nervously as the first test of the zero-point weapon targeted a chunk of Takari hull material recovered from debris near Luna. The metal alloy had withstood every conventional weapon in Earth's arsenal without a scratch. A silent pulse emanated from the prototype cannon. For a brief moment, the Takari material seemed to shimmer as though reality itself was uncertain how to define it. Then, silently, it separated into two perfect halves, the cut edges so clean they reflected light like mirrors. "It didn't melt or explode," observed the Japanese Prime Minister. "It just ceased to be connected," Park finished. "The zero-point disruption temporarily removed the electromagnetic force in that precise plane. Without that force, atoms can't maintain their bonds." A chilling silence fell over the room as they contemplated the implications of such a weapon. 3 decks below, in the medical bay of the facility, Captain Lee sat up from her bed, wincing at the pain from her burns. As one of the few survivors, recovered from the Dehan's escape pods, she had spent weeks fighting for her life. Now, hearing that the handbit neared completion, she had one goal: taking command of the vessel that would carry her fallen crewmate's legacy. "Captain, please," the doctor protested. "Your injuries haven't fully healed." Lee fixed him with a stare that brooked no argument. "The Takari will be in firing position within 48 hours. I'll heal in the captain's chair." Admiral Kang found her later, reviewing crew assignments in her temporary quarters. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "The Hambit needs the best commander we have," he said. "Someone who's faced the Takari and understands how they fight." "Then we agree," Lee replied, not looking up from her tablet. Kang sighed. "There are over 7 billion lives depending on this mission. And I'll be taking 153 with me. I've memorized each name." Now she met his gaze. "Including the 42 who served with me on the Dehan." The launch day arrived amid reports that the Takari fleet had begun its final approach to Earth. In the massive underwater bay, seawater slowly filled the chamber as the Hambit prepared for its first and possibly last voyage. The volunteer crew, engineers, pilots, weapons specialists, had been selected from thousands of applicants worldwide. Each understood the likely one-way nature of their mission. Captain Lee stood on the bridge, her uniform crisp despite the bandages still visible at her collar. The crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces showing determination rather than fear. "Reactor at full capacity," reported Chief Engineer Wong. "Zero-point cannon charged and ready for deployment." "Adaptive. Shields online," added Lieutenant Han at Tactical. "Frequency synchronization systems functioning at optimal levels." Lee took her captain's chair, feeling the weight of history and expectation. Through the forward viewport, she could see the massive bay doors beginning to open, revealing the dark Pacific waters beyond. "This ship carries the hopes of every human, on Earth and in captivity," she addressed her crew. "But more importantly, it carries something that Takari have never encountered. Humans who aren't afraid to die, stopping them." She nodded to the helm. "Take us out, Lieutenant. Intercept course." With the Takari fleet, the Hanbit glided forward into the abyssal depths, its hull gleaming under the facility's lights, before disappearing into darkness. Its propulsion system, another innovation born of desperate necessity, left no visible wake as it accelerated toward the surface. In orbit, Admiral Rand watched Earth with growing impatience. His ultimatum had been met with silence, an unprecedented response in his long career of conquest. Now sensors detected unusual energy signatures from the planet below, but nothing his tacticians could properly identify. Perhaps they're testing primitive weapons in a futile display of resistance, he mused to his officers. Prepare the first wave for atmospheric entry. Target their remaining military installations, then their governmental centers. As the Takari fleet positioned itself for the killing blow, none of them noticed the small vessel rising from Earth's oceans, its systems in silent running mode, its revolutionary weapons primed for humanity's last stand. Admiral Rand stood on the command deck of the Dark Star, his forearms clasped behind his back as Earth filled the viewscreen. The blue-green world hung suspended against the blackness of space, seemingly peaceful, despite the armada of 10,000 Takari warships now arranged in attack formation around it. Still no response to our ultimatum, reported his communications. Officer Rand's secondary eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of mild surprise. In 17 conquests, no species had ever simply ignored a Takari ultimatum. They either surrendered immediately or made futile proclamations of defiance before being crushed. Perhaps their communications infrastructure is more damaged than we thought, he mused. No matter. Begin the descent sequence for the first wave. Target their remaining military installations, then government centers. A soft alert chimed from the sensor station. Admiral detecting a small vessel ascending from the planet's ocean. Single craft approximately 1/5 the size of a standard cruiser. Rand waved a dismissive hand. A diplomatic vessel, finally. They've seen reason and are sending representatives to discuss terms of surrender. The tactical officer zoomed in on the approaching ship. Unlike the boxy utilitarian craft they had encountered at the lunar and Martian colonies, this vessel featured smooth, flowing lines, almost reminiscent of ancient Takari designs. Its hull gleamed with an unusual metallic sheen that seemed to shift colors as it moved. Curious design, Rand commented. Prepare to receive their transmission. The bridge fell silent as the small human vessel continued its approach, making no attempt to communicate. It accelerated suddenly, its trajectory, bringing it directly toward the center of the Takari formation, directly toward the Dark Star. Admiral, the tactical officer's voice had an edge now. The vessel is powering weapons systems. Rand's amusement turned to irritation. A single ship, against this fleet, fire a warning shot across their bow. The Dark Star's forward batteries discharged, sending a blinding beam of energy toward the approaching human vessel. What happened next caused every Takari officer on the bridge to freeze in shock. The beam struck the human ship directly, not a warning shot, but a direct hit due to its unexpected acceleration. Yet, instead of vaporizing the tiny vessel, the energy seemed to ripple across its surface before dissipating harmlessly into space. Impossible, breathed the weapons officer. Direct hit confirmed, but their shields— All batteries fire, Rand ordered, his voice tight with sudden concern. Multiple weapon systems locked onto the human ship as it continued its approach, unaffected by the barrage. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and quantum disruptors, weapons that had shattered the defenses of far more advanced civilizations, all seemed to slide off the smaller vessel's shields like water from oiled glass. On the bridge of the Hanbit, Captain Lee gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered under the assault. The innovative shield systems were holding, but the strain registered in the rising pitch of the shield generators and the worried glances exchanged by her crew. Shields at 87% and stabilizing, reported Lieutenant Han. The frequency synchronization is working perfectly. Each time they adjust their attack pattern, our shields adapt automatically. Lee nodded sharply. Time to show them what else we can do. Helm, attack pattern Nova, weapons. Prepare the 0-point cannon for first demonstration. The Hanbeat suddenly changed course, its revolutionary gravitic drive allowing it to maneuver with an agility that defied conventional physics. It shot past the Dark Star, so close that Takari officers could see individual hull plates through their viewports, then banked hard toward a cluster of Takari heavy cruisers. Target locked, announced the weapons officer. 0-point cannon, charged and ready. Lee took a deep breath. Countless simulations had shown what should happen, but no one had ever deployed such a weapon in actual combat. Fire. There was no dramatic beam, no explosive projectile, just a barely visible ripple in space that extended from the Hanbit toward the nearest Takari cruiser. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, silently, the massive alien warship, AI vessel that had survived bombardments from entire planetary defense systems, simply separated into two perfect halves. The cut so clean, it appeared to have been sliced by some cosmic blade. Systems failed across both sections as atmosphere vented into space. Secondary explosions blossomed along the split seams as power conduits ruptured and fuel cells detonated. The proud Takari warship, which had participated in the subjugation of a dozen worlds, became an expanding cloud of debris in less than 30 seconds. On the Dark Star's bridge, stunned silence gave way to frantic activity. "What was that?" Ran demanded, his voice barely controlled. "Analysis. Unknown weapon technology," replied the science officer, his hands moving frantically over the sensor controls. "It appears to have created some kind of discontinuity in the structure of the cruiser itself. Not an energy beam or projectile, more like a localized disruption of fundamental forces." "Impossible," Ran whispered, but the evidence floated before him in the form of his destroyed cruiser. The Hanbit didn't wait for the Takari to recover from their shock. It banked hard again, targeting another capital ship. The zero-point cannon pulsed once more, and another Takari vessel split cleanly in two. "All ships, concentrate fire on that vessel," Ran roared, his calm professionalism cracking for the first time in centuries of warfare. "Use all weapons! Overwhelm their shields through volume of fire!" Thousands of Takari weapons turned toward the single human ship, filling space with a web of destructive energy, so dense it seemed solid. The Hanbit danced through the barrage, its adaptive shields flaring bright with each impact but holding firm. Where it could not evade, it absorbed, the shield frequencies shifting microseconds before each impact to match and neutralize the Takari weapons. "Shield capacity at 60%, reported Han, sweat beading on his forehead. "We can't maintain this indefinitely, Captain." Lee studied the tactical display, watching as the Takari ships began to coordinate their fire more effectively, learning from each failed attempt. The Hanbit was revolutionary, but not invincible. They needed to inflict maximum damage before their advantages were neutralized. "We need to target their command ships," she decided. "Tactical, identify the vessels directing fleet movements." 5 command ships identified, Han replied after a moment, including the flagship at the center of their formation. Lee studied the display, noting the thousands of warships between them and those targets. To reach them would mean plunging into the heart of the Takari formation, likely a one-way journey. The bridge crew fell silent, all eyes on their captain. They knew what such an order meant. "You all volunteered knowing this might be a suicide mission," Lee said quietly. "Now I'm asking for confirmation. We go in, we take out their command structure, we give Earth a fighting chance." One by one, each officer nodded. No hesitation, no fear. "Helm, plot course directly for the Takari flagship," Lee ordered, her voice steady. "Maximum thrust. Weapons, prepare the zero-point cannon for rapid fire sequence. Let's show them humanity doesn't surrender." The Hanbit suddenly accelerated toward the center of the Takari formation, its engines pushing beyond safety parameters. As the small human vessel plunged into the heart of the alien armada, it left a trail of bifurcated Takari ships in its wake, the zero-point cannon firing with mechanical precision at each new target. Admiral Ran watched in growing horror as his carefully orchestrated formation dissolved into chaos. Ship after ship, vessels that had survived conflicts spanning centuries, split apart under the human weapon's impossible touch, and the lone vessel kept coming, directly toward his flagship, undeterred by the concentrated fire of thousands of weapons. "How?" he whispered, 4 eyes wide with disbelief. "How is this possible?" The answer, had he known it, was simple. The Takari had conquered through superior technology, but had never faced a species fighting for its very survival with nothing left to lose. The Dark Star's bridge erupted in chaos as the Hanbit cut through the final defensive line. Admiral Ran watched in disbelief as his elite guard ships, vessels that had survived battles across hundreds of star systems, split apart one after another, cleaved by the impossible human weapon. "Transfer all available power to forward shields," Ran ordered, his voice hoarse from shouting commands that increasingly fell on deaf ears. His once disciplined crew verged on panic as the small human vessel closed to weapons range. The tactical officer's voice shook. "Admiral, recommending immediate withdrawal. We've lost over 3,000 ships. The fleet is—" A violent impact rocked the massive flagship, sending officers sprawling across the command deck. Emergency lights flashed as artificial gravity fluctuated. Through the viewport, Ran watched in horror as the handbit executed an impossible maneuver, somehow phasing partially through his vessel's shields to attach itself to the hull like a predatory creature latching onto prey. "They've breached our hull," shouted the security chief. "Boarding parties detected on decks 7 through 12. For the first time in his 6th-century military career, Admiral Ran faced the unthinkable: defeat. His hands moved to the command console, fingers hovering over the self-destruct sequence that would vaporize both vessels, rather than allow the flagship's capture. A sudden paralysis seized his limbs. Looking down, he saw a strange device attached to his chest plate, emitting a subtle field that rendered his muscles unresponsive. Human soldiers in advanced combat suits poured onto the bridge, their weapons trained on the Takari officers. Their center walked Captain Lee, her uniform showing scorch marks from the intense battle, but her expression calm and resolved. "Admiral Ran," she said, her translator converting her words to the liquid tones of High Takari. "Your fleet is defeated. Surrender your command or watch the rest of your ships join the debris field." Throughout the Takari formation, the remaining vessels received an unprecedented signal: retreat. Ships designed for conquest, never expecting to flee, engaged their jump drives in disorganized panic. Space around Earth rippled as thousands of dimensional tears opened, swallowing the remnants of the once mighty invasion force. News of the impossible defeat spread across subspace channels faster than light itself. On Brentari Prime, a world conquered 70 years earlier, the indigenous population gathered in hushed groups, sharing whispered stories of the tiny human vessel that had decimated the unconquerable Takari fleet. On Zeptis, mine workers paused. In their labor, eyes turned skyward as they considered the implications. In secret chambers across 100 subjugated worlds, resistance leaders who had never dared hope now began to plan. In the Takari Imperial Palace, the High Command faced their first-ever emergency session without Admiral Ran. Reports flooded in from the borders of their territory. Client species were refusing tribute payments. Colonial governors reported civil unrest. 3 minor systems had already declared independence, their puppet governments overthrown. An empire built on fear was discovering what happened when that fear evaporated. Meanwhile, Earth transformed, from a world preparing for extinction to a planet surging with newfound confidence and purpose. The underwater facility that had birthed the Hanbit expanded rapidly, with 7 more vessels under construction. Scientists worldwide collaborated to refine the revolutionary technologies that had saved humanity, while diplomatic teams prepared to make contact with other species who might become allies against Takari retaliation. Deep beneath the Pacific, in a secured chamber designed for high-risk prisoners, Admiral Ran sat motionless in his cell. The once proud conqueror had not spoken since his capture, expecting the same brutality he would have shown a defeated enemy. Instead, day after day, human scientists and military personnel simply asked questions, recorded his biological data, and left him in bewildered isolation. The door slid open, revealing Captain Lee. She dismissed the guards and took a seat across from the Takari admiral. "I expected execution," Ran said finally, his translator converting his clicks and hums into human speech. "Why delay the inevitable?" Lee studied him with curious eyes. "That's not how we operate." "Impossible. All species seek vengeance when capable of it."